What's up, everybody? It's Man of Low Moral Fiber here. My name's Luke, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Weisenheimer as a part of my Does It Suck series. The Weisenheimer is the Hyperion SMG with the Maliwan barrel, specifically in the corrosive element. Ordinarily, a different element will not give a gun a different name, however, that is not the case here. If we look at the shock version of this weapon, it is called the Storm. And so it is, again, the Hyperion SMG with the Maliwan barrel, but specifically in the shock element. I brought in the others here as well, and you can see that the fire version is called the Backburner, and the slag version is called the Wellness, with the non-elemental version being called a Projectile Convergence. So I don't really consider these to be different weapons. That would be like considering the Fire Butcher different than the Shock Butcher. They are the same weapon. You'll notice that they have the same stats. Same thing with the Weisenheimer and the Storm. They're just the same gun with a different element. And I think it's a little bit weird that they decided to give this weapon its own name, and this weapon its own name, when there are things out there, I don't think I have any on me right now, that share a name, like the Maliwan Sniper, which can be either the Maliwan-barreled Maliwan Sniper or the Doll-barreled Maliwan Sniper. So basically, this is a nondescript Hyperion purple SMG. There's nothing really that special about it. You can see that it'll kill things quickly, but compared to the Hyperion barreled version, it has a slightly lower base damage and trade for 2 more in the magazine, and a little bit better damage over time, both in the damage and the chance. However, the differences between the two are pretty much negligible. This is just kind of a standard Hyperion SMG. And some people, I guess, have a misunderstanding about that. They think the weapon is extremely special or rare because it has its own name, but it really, isn't a different weapon just because it has a different name. If we're saying it's the name of a weapon that differentiates a weapon from another, why is this not a pearlescent Maliwan sniper rifle called the Storm? So obviously, it's not the name that differentiates weapons from one another. It is their construction, the barrel and the body that they have. And so some barrels can have special effects. This is one of them, for example, the Pimpernel. If this didn't have the special doll barrel, it would just be called a Snider because it is a Maliwan sniper with the doll barrel. But because it's a special doll barrel, it is the Pimpernel. That's what gives it its special effect. So it's worth noting that the Weisenheimer really isn't its own weapon. It's just a corrosive version of a weapon. And because of that, I think its rarity, perhaps, is a little bit overrated, It's like saying that the corrosive version of the Raquel is, a different weapon than the fire version of the Raquel, and as a result of that, it is so rare. It's just not really the case. So as a result of that, I think people overrate the rarity and specialness of this weapon by a significant margin, or, people think it's special, and I really see nothing special about it. Like I said, it is basically a nondescript Hyperion purple SMG. Go ahead, get this guy slagged and taken out as well. So it definitely doesn't suck so far. I mean, Maya has a cat mod. She's proficient with SMGs. So, yeah, it's going to perform pretty well here. It's a purple SMG that has a critical hit damage boost because I'm using the diamond skin, which you obviously have to get from Tiny Tina. Now, I've heard people say this is the rarest weapon in the game. I would definitely disagree with that particular assertion there. There are a lot of weapons that I think would be harder to get than this. Obviously, there is nowhere to farm specifically for this. Butt Stallion is the only specific place to farm for the diamond version. And obviously, the gemstone version of each purple weapon is most likely going to be a lot more difficult to acquire than your standard purple version of it. But that's obvious and comes with the territory as far as gemstone weapons go. That said, there are I feel that you could just run the train or some other area to get purple weapons, like, say, the golden chest, and eventually find a Weisenheimer or just another element of it, which has a different name, but is, in my opinion, every bit the same weapon. You just farm the purple chest and eventually get it. That said, I don't think it's that rare or is an especially difficult weapon to acquire. In my Fresh Start series, I had a lot of trouble acquiring a decent longbow slag transfusion, and that's just because it's a purple item with no specific place to farm for it, which, you know, there is for pretty much any purple item except for very special cases like the Love Thumper or the Torg items, which you can obviously get from the DLC pretty easily because of the vending machines. That said, I just used the golden chest to farm until I got the longbow slag transfusion that I needed. And that's pretty much what I would recommend doing if someone really wanted a Weisenheimer or a Backburner or a Storm or just this particular Hyperion SMG, whatever you want to call it. But the one with the Maliwan barrel, basically, you know? Like I said, there's just nothing special about it in my mind. So, if you think it's special and you want to continue to think it's special, that's great and everything, but as far as I can tell, nothing special about this weapon. It's just another weapon. It's not even a very powerful purple weapon as far as purple weapons go. There are a lot more that, you know, really stand out in comparison to this. That said, it's definitely not a bad weapon. It definitely gets the job done. It kills a super badass loader in one phase lock without any critical hits, which is what you would want from an SMG on Cat Maya, I would say, at overpower level 8. But then again, I think most purple SMGs would do that, save for maybe the Bandit E-Tech one, if you consider it to be a purple per se. Ah, crap. Set myself all acidy here. Don't have bore. Sometimes that gets to me a little bit. No worries. As you can see, though, the weapon is very proficient. It's going to blow through everything. But obviously, just having its own name doesn't make it its own weapon. By that, you know, line of thinking, the Storm, which is just the shock version of this weapon, is the same weapon as the Maliwan Pearlescent, which is definitely not true, of course. So we'll just continue to work through here. Again, it's a half-decent SMG, you know, or better than half-decent. It's full decent. But to be expected, of course. It's a purple SMG from Hyperion. It's going to work well. It has a deep mag. It, you know, with Maya's other boost, it synergizes well. It's going to kill some things, for certain. But is it a super special weapon? Nah. And there are a lot of weapons that I would have a more difficult time farming for than this weapon. I think farming for a perfect Tide of Terramorphous would be very, very, very difficult. You know, because for that, I specifically would need, at OP8, a grounded Tide of Terramorphous if you're going to be using the Chain Lightning and everything. And so as a result of that, that's a very difficult weapon to acquire, even though there's a specific enemy to farm it from. Because Terramorphous can drop multiple special items, or rare items from his loot pool, and he's not going to drop one of them every time, it can be very difficult to acquire a Hide of Terramorphous, especially since Terramorphous is a much more difficult enemy to kill than your average enemy. And he's the only enemy that drops it. And so that would just be one example of an item or a weapon that I would consider more difficult to acquire than this one. And obviously, when the Cobra was in its pre-patched form, I would say the Cobra was definitely the rarest or most difficult weapon to farm for. You could set Cheat Engine to make enemies drop only, you know, certain weapons and everything, or certain types of weapons, certain rarities. And I believe the Cobra was classified as like a purple or something. I don't know. It's been a while. But that was one way that you could make farming for the Cobra a little bit easier. I haven't tested any Cobra farming since the update. Perhaps that is something I should look at, see how easy they made it to farm. I don't know if it's, you know, still very difficult to acquire or anything, but to say this is the rarest or most difficult item to acquire in the game is just kind of stupid in my mind. It's not that rare. You know, it has its own name, and I guess that's what throws some people off, of course. But just the name of a weapon doesn't differentiate it from another weapon. The stats do, and the stats come from the barrel and the body. Those are, you know, and the rarity, of course. But Yeah, nothing super rare about this weapon. I definitely think twister farming it would be a much bigger pain in the ass than this as well. Then again, there is no way in specific to look for this weapon, and so just like a stockpile relic, well, stockpile relic's significantly easier, I would say, than a specific grenade that you want. In my case, I really wanted the longbow slag transfusion for my legitimate sniper zero, and that was very difficult to farm. I would consider that equally rare to a diamond Weisenheimer. So now I'm going to use the shock version of the Weisenheimer, which is called the Storm, to take out this guy's shield here, and now I'll switch back over to the Weisenheimer and try to knock off his two gun arms as we work his health down. That is what we want to do. Cool, so now he's dead. He's not a very tough boss, obviously, especially at single player damage scaling and everything, or health scaling. So, yeah. We'll kill a few more dudes here, and then we'll be done. But people had asked me to do a video on the Weisenheimer for some time, and basically the Weisenheimer is really not special. Some people have the misconception that it is. I'm not of that line of thinking. It's just another weapon, basically. It's just a purple weapon. It may be such a deal that Maliwan barreled Hyperion SMGs are rarer than your normal Hyperion SMG, and possibly that Hyperion weapons are a little bit rarer in general, perhaps. But again, that doesn't make this weapon exceedingly rare. As any other purple weapon, it's fine. But if you got this, and are like, oh, I'll never get the Weisenheimer, this is a Weisenheimer with a different element. And so is the fire one. They're the same damn weapon. And, the stats say that. They're identical. They are the same weapon. And so to think specifically that the Weisenheimer is so rare is a little bit off to me. But some people are going to think what they want, and that's fine. As far as its viability as a weapon at overpower level 8, it's perfectly acceptable. Most purple SMGs with Maya would be. So, if you guys have any other questions, leave them in the comments. As always, I do thank you very much for watching. I do appreciate it. And if you haven't yet taken the time to subscribe, I would appreciate that as well. Otherwise, I do hope to catch you next time. Bye, guys.